What up, perps? Kid Kobe is back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense. And more often than not now, California. So let's get rolling. So before we get into all the political BS of the week, World Cup is kicked off. United States won 4-1 against Paraguay. They looked really good doing it. Canada, another host nation, managed to tie, and Mexico, the third host nation, they won their game against South Africa. Quite honestly, they did not look that good. South Africa was a wreck. You know, I love soccer. You know, I've been a soccer fan since the early 90s. I mean, I've been a soccer fan all my life, but I mean, in terms of watching, you know, it really started in 92, 93. And, you know, the one thing I love about it is that, you know, I run across rival fans, you know. I'm a USA supporter, but I have friends that are Mexican supporters. I have friends that support Liverpool. I support Arsenal. But, you know, it's the community. And I think that's one of the things that we're really lacking right now in the United States, you know. We have all these small, tiny communities, but we forget about the big community of America. And a lot of that's down to just the way our politics are being run right now, you know. You know, and speaking of that, you know, our 250th anniversary is coming up. Trying to make sense of how much of what I'm hearing about states pulling out or musical acts pulling out and stuff really has to do with Trump making it about himself. I certainly hope he doesn't because, you know, this is our birthday. You know, he's having his birthday. He's having a big UFC fight on Sunday. That's great, you know. But I thought, you know, with all the talk about him making it all about himself, I thought maybe this was a good time to kind of just go back across some of the things that I wanted and didn't want out of Trump, you know. And the first on my list was, you know, to pull the DEI requirements and put in the high-speed internet. You know, this goes to the $42 billion program known as BEAD, Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment. You know, and they passed this. This was that bipartisan infrastructure law back in 21. And, you know, they had these regulatory hurdles, permitting and policies, a lot of it surrounding DEI and the climate, you know, climate mandates. And, you know, fortunately, you know, Trump did what I hoped he would do. And they removed the labor and climate-related mandates. They cut the regulatory red tape. And they transitioned away from the strict preference for fiber optic cables, you know, in favor of broader solutions. And as of now, you know, all 56 states and territories have unlocked their initial grant funds, and construction projects are breaking ground, which is great. You know, this includes the Indian reservations. This includes people who really just live on the fringes of society for one reason or not, just small towns. You know, my daughter has a friend who lives in a small town in Pennsylvania, and, you know, they have to rely on Starlink, which is fine, you know, but it's not the best. You know, it's nothing like a nice hardwired cable to get true high-speed internet. You know, one of the other things I was hoping he'd do is he'd remove weed from the schedule. And, yeah, he lowered it, and that's good, and that opens the door for further research into the properties of marijuana and what it might do for us health-wise. I think it's great. I think it's a step in the right direction. You know, I was hoping he'd end the Ukrainian war, the Ukraine-Russian war, but I don't know. I don't know about that. It seems like both sides are just, I don't know. It seems like they like the fight. I'm kind of bewildered by the whole thing. You know, I've never thought that Ukraine would actually win this war. But honestly, I think they kind of have. I think Russia's really getting tired of it. But, you know, he didn't do that. I was hoping he'd hold pause on Gaza and go after Iran. And, you know, he did go after Iran. Not exactly the way I wanted it to go. I think he should have kept up the pressure for a lot longer. But, you know, it's just so stupid when we have to pause on things that need to be done for political reasons. And the fifth thing on the list was shut the border and shut the parole programs that Biden had started, or, that were being exploited under Biden. And I think he did that. Yeah, some of the things that I was hoping he wouldn't do is focus on revenge. I think there has been some focus on revenge. I can give him a little leeway on that for the tit for tat. All the crap that they put him through, all those dumb felonies in New York that were just insignificant. I was hoping he wouldn't attack the LGBT community, and I really don't think he did. I know some states have. I know there are some ongoing issues, particularly in the world of athletics. But I don't view those as attacks on the community. I view those as protecting women's sports. Abortion rights, well, each state kind of did what they wanted to do, and I don't support any restrictions on abortion, period. It's not something that I would choose to do. Fourth on the list was placate extremes. I can't really say that he has been placating the extremes, but a lot of his followers have become more extreme. And I certainly don't think that he's done enough purple to really pull the country back together. So I wish he would kind of get around to that. And the fifth thing was forget about Iran. And I feel like he took care of Iran. He went over there. He started something. But it just wasn't fully formed. And it's kind of dragged us into this, the Strait of Hormuz being blockaded by Iran. Iran still attacking ships. Iran attacking allies. I think the pressure should have just been kept on Iran. But overall, I'm satisfied with what he's done. And my one big criticism is that, Trump is his own political party. And to not kind of try to draw that party more towards the middle, I think is something that I'm very disappointed in. We'll see. We'll see how it all ends up. But so far, so good. Not always thrilled with the way he goes about things, but, he has gotten some results here and there. So let's turn a little closer to home here. Spencer Pratt concedes the LA mayor race. Quote, "You have no idea how bad things are about to get." And, one of the things about Spencer Pratt's campaign, now, I'll be the first to admit, I don't know how he would have done as mayor. Okay? I don't know if he would have done better than Bass. I don't know. I can't say that. Bass has gotten a few things in the positive column, but that's only if you trust the statistics that her office is putting out. Rahman is just a straight up leftist communist. I think we've seen enough out of the far left to know that they do not have good ideas. One of the things that Spencer Pratt had said during his concession speech was that he was going to continue to expose this corrupt machine. And that's really the problem that we have right now, is that, we do have these, as Spencer puts it, two corrupt communists running for mayor of Los Angeles. And that's what we're seeing across the country. It doesn't really matter if it's a red or blue state. What we're seeing is rampant corruption. But before we get into more of that, let's finish with Pratt here. Quote, he says, "Angelenos are now stuck with two morons responsible for their problems, and they have to choose between dumb and dumber. That's not a choice. That's the machine protecting the machine." And that is what's going on. I mean, Rahman has not done anything of note. Bass, again, if you trust the numbers, maybe she's made a small difference here and there. She does at least seem to understand that we need more firefighters, we need more cops, and there are certain things that we just have to do regardless of politics. But again, she continues to support this homeless industrial machine that's out there. Right now, Bass is being literally sued by her own family over the Palisade fires. I think she mishandled that. And what makes that situation so much worse was that she was over in Africa. I don't even understand that. There was no need for the mayor of LA to be over in Africa. She should have flown back immediately. Apparently, Pratt has some audio recordings of both the candidates that will sink their ship. If he does, I hope that does come out. He's going to continue his campaign to expose City Hall without worrying about campaign finance law and having to worry about offending CNN viewers. And, that's true. Like he said, you have no idea how bad things are about to get for this city. The city is a mess, and you're about to reward the arsonists who torched the place with 4 more years of destruction. That's... When you're putting your money into all of this social justice stuff, or like these states that are talking about reparations and things like that, when you're throwing around money to appease little segments of the voter population, but you're ignoring the big problems, that's how these cities start to fall apart. I don't know how else to put this. I mean, this is not about the fact that Spencer Pratt had an R next to his name. It's about the failed leadership of Bass and the danger of Rahman and what they bring. I mean, they don't care at all. There's that guy in Maine, Plattner or something like that. He is leading. He got the most votes to become governor. I think they still have like an election to go, but he won like the primary or whatever. This is a guy who sports a Nazi tattoo. This is a guy who has anti-Semitic comments on file. He has sexual harassment on file. But because he says the right thing, the left will vote for him. Now, I know you could make the same case for Republicans. I get that. You got people out there. Matt Gaetz comes to mind, where, they do dubious things and people vote for him. And that's one of the big problems we have here. But if nobody's ever going to call these people out, they're just going to keep running the ship. And one of the ways they run the ship is they seize power through, kind of corrupt means. And they get things passed through corrupt means. And again, this is the problem that we have. That no matter how much we stand up, there is political machines working behind the scenes. We'll get into that in a second. But one of the big problems that Bass and Rahman certainly overlook is the problem of the homeless. And I say homeless because that's just the generic term. These are street urchins. These are drug addicts who just want to live freely. The streets are an addicting thing. When you live on the streets, you have the ultimate freedom. You're free of bills. You're free of rules. You're free of taxes. You're free of a lot of stuff. But they're here in LA, they're responsible for like half the fires. They are a declared public nuisance. They do as they please, and we let them, and we have to suffer the consequences. It's fires that burn our infrastructure. It's theft that ruins our infrastructure. It's these encampments that take over parks and make people nervous when they pop up around schools and in front of businesses. I work in Los Angeles a lot, and I see that. Where I saw a group of kids waiting for a bus, and it's just trash and tents and scraggly people hobbling along the streets. And I think, why do these kids have to put up with that? And that's the big problem. But then the machine kicks in, and no matter what we want to change, the machine can do what it wants. Multiple Skid Row residents have claimed they were offered cash or cigarettes by canvassers to register to vote or sign political petitions. I heard it from a homeless guy just the other day that he was paid to sign petitions. This is what's going on. These people are going out. They're getting people to sign ballots. They carry around blank ballots. They put down homeless shelters as their address. What? Because you're living on the streets of Los Angeles, all of a sudden you're a Los Angeles citizen? Doesn't matter where you're registered to vote. We'll just re-register you to a homeless shelter. And, most of this is going on with the Democrats. But what's really scary about this is when it comes to, petitions and bills. This is illegal. But when they have these bad bills, these bills that give Sacramento or Los Angeles County the power, or the city, more power to tax people or to control our lives. I mean, right now in California, they're trying to control what tires we put on our car. And they try to say, it's in the name of efficiency. Well, that's bullshit. It's an attempt to drive up the price of tires so poor people can't afford to get new tires on their car, and eventually they just have to take the bus, which is very ineffective around this area, unless you work in the right area. And, of course, when we talk about these homeless people getting paid to vote for ballot measures or politicians, the LA County Registrar's Office, of course, says, oh, this is unfounded. But then you skip down a little ways and you find out, well, LA County woman to plead guilty to paying people on Skid Row to register to vote. Brenda Armstrong, Marina Del Rey, 64 years old, went by the name of Annika. She was agreed to enter a plea on a future date to one count of paying another person to register to vote, a federal charge that carries a penalty of up to 5 years behind bars. That's what she's been doing. She has been doing it for 20 years, going out and paying people to sign petitions and then collecting money from the people who are sponsoring these petitions. That's crazy. I mean, if every time you vote against something, they get a vote from the streets for that thing, it passes. That's how they do these things. This is how they stop recalls. This is how all of a sudden, Spencer Pratt went from what a lot of people were calling an insurmountable lead to losing to Rahman. So again, we don't get the representation that we're asking for. We get the representation that they're assigning to us. And Armstrong here, the one who's pleading guilty, she used her own address for people who didn't have addresses. This is what people... This has been seen, this has been admitted to, and you could say, oh, well, Armstrong only did a few people here and there. No, it was over 20 years, and she's going to plead guilty to it. This is troubling because this undermines what people who work and pay taxes want. If you can go out, and keep in mind, in California, there's something like 150,000 homeless people. That's a lot of votes out there. The other problem we have is that we have voter rolls that are full of people who aren't supposed to vote. Non-citizens in key blue states were on voter rolls for years, and some even voted in prior elections. And now those people are afraid that they committed fraud. They don't want to be on the voter rolls, so they're coming forward to get themselves removed because they want, their path to citizenship to remain open. It's just crazy. It's not a matter of saying, like, well, Pratt lost the election because these people went out and did slimy tactics. That's immaterial. It's the fact that these slimy tactics are being used, and they're being used to garner votes for things that maybe we don't really want. I mean, it looked like the sales tax in LA was going to go down. All of a sudden it goes through. It looked like Pratt was going to get the second spot for the runoff, and all of a sudden that goes down. And the problem here is that they know that they have these votes out there, and they start to look at what they need, and then they start filling out ballots. They start filling out petitions. They know they can go to the streets and get a bunch of people. The U.S. Attorney right now, Bill Essayli, is saying that people are going to get charged over California's voting rolls because there is a lot of, if you know where to look, there are a lot of votes out there, and they're on these voter rolls. People who really aren't supposed to be there, but they're still on the roll. So if you fill out a ballot and get somebody to sign it, you got to vote. I don't know. We don't know. I mean, this is becoming a big problem where we are really losing faith in our election process. And part of the reason is because California allows voting to continue way long past election night. And that's kind of crazy. I mean, there is a council member on the LA City Council, Hugo Soto Martinez, who's trying to get a measure passed that would allow non-citizens to vote in LA elections. See, and again, that's one of those things where if all of a sudden you can build up a bunch of names of non-citizens who want to vote, and you say, okay, now they're allowed to vote. Well, now you know that you have those voters that you can use. If they don't actually cast a ballot, you can cast it for them. I know this is all about just fraudulent elections, but that's what we set up. And then we set up this whole thing where your mail-in ballot, which is the biggest part of the problem, which I have always thought is a problem, you can postmark it by election day and they'll still count. I mean, the election was last Tuesday. It's still not really done. And that allows people to slide things in. Now, I'm not saying they are, but it's there. That's the problem. You know, these non-citizens, non-residents, homeless, and ample time in places like California to see if action is needed. We have bills being passed and petitions and things like that, like this upcoming billionaires tax. Gavin Newsom himself doesn't even support the billionaires tax. But yet it may pass simply because petition gatherers went out and got signatures from a bunch of bums on the streets. People who really don't care. They don't even have any skin in the game. They're just going to go with who gives them the cash or the cigarettes or whatever it is. And that is a huge problem. Whether or not that has swayed elections or swayed petitions or swayed the voting on referendums and measures and all that, we don't know. Because part of the problem is that these people are on the voter rolls. They're, according to California law, properly registered. But therein lies the problem. And now half of the population goes, oh, well, that's fine. It's all working for me. You know, but we shouldn't be happy that somebody like Rahman slides in. She's done nothing. She has done stuff that directly opposes what most Angelenos, most Californians want. I mean, she doesn't want the homeless kicked out of the parks. Most of us do. But the fraud and all of that, it trickles down. You know, there was sexual abuse allegations in, a lot of our juvenile facilities, juvenile halls and foster homes, county-run juvenile halls and foster homes, right? And there were 11,000 total claims, and LA County is going to pay $4 billion. Well, already 9 people have come forward and said that they were paid to join the lawsuit. 4 of those people weren't even at a foster home or a juvenile facility. And now, again, we have to investigate the fraud. Nathan Hochelman, the LA County District Attorney, says about 80% of them, 4 out of 5, may be fraudulent. We can't expect to live in a corrupt society that allows so much fraud and expect that we're ever going to get a good result. When so much money is being stolen by criminals and by lawyers and by other people who are just looking to get rich, that leaves less money for what needs to be done. Then you elect a bunch of people who have these grand ideas, such as like reparation and guaranteed income and all of that kind of stuff, and you run out of money for the things that you need. California needs power. We need water. We need cleaner streets. We need safer streets. You can quote numbers all day long, but what I see in LA is frightening. The size of these encampments, the crazy people running up and down the streets, yelling and screaming off of their medication. Families just dump people onto the streets because they no longer can handle them. And we don't do anything about it. We just allow it to continue. Despite the fact that most of us don't want that. And every time we try to do something about it, some idiot ass comes up with a reason why we can't do it. And those politicians are put there possibly through fraud. See, that's the problem. The fraud and the corruption is going to eat this country alive. How do I know this? Look around the world. Every country that you don't want to live in is corrupt. That is one of the things that they share across this globe. Corruption ruins countries. And we don't want to do anything about it because every time somebody tries to do something about it, it becomes a partisan issue. And see, that's the political machine protecting the machine. It's sort of like how the left co-opted racism. Anything that they are against, they just claim it's racist. And what are you supposed to say? Well, I don't want to be on the side of racism. Well, it's the same thing that's going on with trying to fix our country. Every time somebody brings something up, it's made into a partisan issue. Fraud and corruption is a nonpartisan issue, and it should be focused on by both groups. And in reality, I don't care what letter you have next to your name. I'm purple. I don't see any P's next to anybody's name, unless that stands for another party that I don't know about. But I don't care if you take down Republicans. I don't care if you take down Democrats. Take down the people who are not acting in the public's best interest. Pure and simple. It's that simple. That's what we need to get to. I'm Kid Copious. Thank you for watching. I'm Purple State Party, and so are you. Love one another. Keep on grinding. And when all of this news just bogs you down, get sweaty and dance it out.